I'm going to do this listener a favor because I don't want to share where you're strategically going and you have a very unique name. We're not going to use your name here, but I'll ask the question anyway. One issue we're struggling with is getting leads from our website that are heavy in one area, for example, medical malpractice, but we want more leads in other practice areas too. Boy, Gyi, do you hear this question? Have you heard this question yet this week? Because I get this every single day. Very common question and a difficult answer, right? What advice do you all have for law firms? Now, we know this person is in the South because they said y'all. For law firms looking to diversify their lead types from their websites. We don't want to turn off the spigot for med-mal necessarily, but it also isn't feasible for all law firms to spend all day screening med-mal leads. And on med-mal leads in particular, what's the best and nicest way to quickly decline a lead we know isn't a case without being dismissive and the potential client leaving a bad review? Okay, so first, Gyi, how do we go beyond that one thing that Google knows us well for?
This is such a great and complicated. I mean, we could do a whole segment on this, but in my view, the short answer is you've got to start publishing. If you're talking about SEO here, we're talking about Google. You got to start publishing on that topic. And so, for example, we talked about this with Darren Shaw. Maybe it's a totally different site. Maybe you're using a practitioner profile in Google Business Profiles for that other category. Because remember, it all comes back to the categories, right? So the tighter your site is about a specific topic, the more opportunity I believe you have to rank, but you can't rank for everything, right? And so Google wants to show sites. If you're a med-mal lawyer, you want to break into like car accidents, we have two options, right? You add a car accident section to your website. Now you're diluting the subject matter of your site. Right. You start a microsite. You can do a practitioner page with a category dedicated to car accidents. But this is tricky stuff. I mean, I don't have a great answer for it, right? On the screening stuff, that's another whole area.
Well, let's hit that in a second. You gave three ideas there, and I think the reality is, you need to understand your competitive context, your site's overall authority, and whether or not you can pull this off. So in some cases, you are forthepeople.com. You have an absolutely rock star backlink profile. You can add stuff and start ranking for it tomorrow. But that's not the same answer for every law firm, right? And so just throwing more content on is going to cannibalize. If you're performing really well somewhere, for most law firms, it is going to cannibalize those efforts of where you're being successful because you are diluting the concentration of what you're talking about, which is exactly why Darren Shaw, and I don't agree with this approach generally from an SEO perspective, but was like, listen, for local, we can actually have just a very, very tight site with not a lot of links pointing to it, but because it's so tight on content, it can actually rank, right? I don't love that for a whole variety of SEO reasons, but it works. And so the reality is if you're performing well in one thing, but you're moving into a competitive market, you want to, you want to go into something else, it's going to hurt unless you have that absolutely rock star backlink profile. There are other things that you can do to try and enhance that. So you're building links to the specific pages of the new practice area that you want to push. Those can be internal links. They can be external links. There's things you can do, but this is not for most firms, this is not a quick fix. Unless you are absolutely crushing it, and Gyi, I'd be curious of your perspective on this, unless you are absolutely crushing it in your market from a site authority, and by site authority, I mean links perspective. Would you, from a theory perspective, agree with that?
Yeah, for theory-wise, I would. And I think the other thing, too, is like, you and I, Conrad, as we always disclose, like, we love organic search. Like, that's what we cut our teeth on. That's what we've been doing. The other thing here is you can buy it. Buy the other categories. If you're happy with what's going on with your primary category and we're talking short term and you don't want to invest in a new site and you don't want to dilute the topical authority of your existing site, go sign up for some LSAs in some other categories. Go do some pay-per-click in other categories. Do some social media buys in other categories. But that's the trick with organic, right? It's like, It's just you don't have the same kind of control over it. And I'm always like, be careful, because the broader you go, the more you potentially dilute. And to Conrad's point, unless you're Morgan and Morgan or one of these other big firms, like you can see, we've seen it happen where it's like, hey, we want to add a practice area, right? And it's like all of a sudden now you're not ranking for what happened to our rankings over here for these other categories we used to rank for.
And the problem is, and this is so self-reinforcing, it drives me crazy. You've had the success here, and you think all I need to do to go and have success elsewhere is just replicate what I'm currently doing, right? We're ranking for X. I'm just going to add Y. Because you've had success. It's the same thing with people on the out. I had this conversation not that long ago. People on the outskirts of a city will kill it in local. And they're like, great, I'm going to go into downtown Dallas and I'm going to kill it too. No, you're not. You're not. You're just not. It's not.
And the other problem is it's also reinforced because, these SEO agencies and your director of marketing is happy to be like, yeah, we'll sell you more content. We'll sell you more locations. How many times, I can't tell you how many Instagram ads I see for like the guide to be able to open more offices for Google business profiles. And I'm like, I can't wait for them to get burned and then be like, you told me that all I had to do is open up this virtual office and follow your guide and I'm just going to rank. And it's like, this is the problem, right? Like there are consequences for every change you make to your website.
Would you like to name the people who are recommending that, Gyi, or are you going to be polite?
I do not. I would not.
You are what?
Money makes a it makes a world go round. Money makes a world go round. Yeah, money make a world go